Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. The second pillar is cognition, which includes thinking, judgments, organizing objects and events into concepts, problem solving, reasoning, and decision making. First, we have concepts, which are ways of categorizing or classifying people's objects and events, such as a dog, which is a natural concept, our understanding of dog in everyday life, versus artificial concept or logical concept. Used in psychological experience, there are formal and natural. There are prototypes, which are how we learn concepts. They are the best examples of concepts, like an apple is a prototype of a fruit. As seen in the last pillar, the schema/schemata is our general knowledge about a particular situation. It may be harmful or helpful in memory, based on any distortions or limited experiences, and might be right or wrong stereotypes and scripts. It is required through experience and is stored in memory. This deals with assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation is when information that doesn't fit the schema, inconsistent with your current view, is what is changed. So now you are remembering the new information falsely to maintain your current schema, views, thoughts, etc. This means that you distort the new information so that it fits into your current schema. This is typically done more than accommodation. Accommodation is when the schemata is revised or made more complex with the new information. Your views, thoughts, opinions, schema change. There's problem solving, which happens when there's an endpoint or goal, but no apparent way to achieve it. People can use the algorithm, system, procedure in which all solutions are considered. This guarantees a solution, but takes a lot of time. For example, 8 letters scrambled into a word will take 40,320 tries to try each. They can also use the heuristic selective strategy, which has a high probability of a correct solution. It is like a rule of thumb, such as 3 vowels tend to not go together in order in an English word. There's a representative heuristic, which classify by what is a representative of a group. Stereotypes are utilized, and it is a useful rule of thumb that helps us make a decision, but can also lead us away. Okay. There is availability heuristics as well, which is the estimation, such as when you're evaluating the weather, if you want to have a pool party or an indoor party. Next, we have framing. This is the way a question is worded that can impact the way we answer a specific question. For example, if I were to tell you the word yellow and then ask you to name a fruit, you're most likely to say banana because you're framed to say that. Framing is the activation, often unconsciously, of certain associations, thus predisposing one's perception, memory, and response. Such as hearing the word yellow will cause a fast response for banana than an unrelated word like television, which has no association with the word banana or yellow. There is gambler's fallacy and the sunk cost fallacy. Next, we have creativity, which is the ability for us to produce new and viable ideas. There are 2 types of thinking: divergent and non-divergent, convergent. Divergent thinking is expanding the number of possible problem solutions. Creative thinking that diverges into different directions is creative, unique, new, out of the box, like different ways someone can use a fork. Convergent thinking is narrowing down the available possible solutions to determine the single best solution. It is the quickest, fastest, and single best way to solve a problem. Example would be a multiple choice test, solving a single math question, shortest distance between 2 points. Today class, we'll be talking about the next pillar, which is memory. Forming memories means you are storing information to use later. The first part is encoding. There's automatic processing, which requires little or no effort, and there isn't conscious control, such as what you ate for dinner last night. There's also effortful processing, which requires attention and mental work like studying. In addition to this, there is maintenance rehearsal and elaborative rehearsal. Maintenance rehearsal is a repetition of information. It is not the best effective form of rehearsal. An example would be the chorus of a song. Elaborative rehearsal is analyzing and the meaning of new information and relating it to information already stored. For example, what does the song mean? Associated with a movie and then something similar that happened to you in your life. The next part is storage, which is how a system maintains or remembers information. First, we have sensory memory, which registers information from one or the 5 main senses for 1 second. It holds a lot of information for a very short time and decays at 1/10 of a second and gone at 1 second. There's episodic memory information from auditory processing, and iconic memory, which is memory information from visual processing. Then we have short-term memory, which I have, which is less than 30 seconds, 7 items plus or minus 2. It deals with the serial position effect. Primacy is remembering the first thing that is in a list, and recency is remembering the last thing from a second. Oh my god. Long-term memory is what is in your knowledge for a long period of time. There's explicit memory, which is the memory of that we are aware of language. It uses top and bottom down processing, and it makes associations from what we previously learned in our stimuli and experiences. There are 3 types of explicit memory: declarative memory, episodic memory, and semantic memory. Declarative memory is, I declare this is a fact. It is fact memory. By the way, the facts can be incorrect, but it's still a declarative memory. Episodic memory is the autobiographical memory system for events in our lives. It is individual episodes from our pasts. Semantic memory is our general information about the world, rules, concepts, and facts. It is not attached to when you learned it. Then we have implicit memory, sometimes referred to as unconscious memory or automatic memory. It uses past experiences to remember things without thinking about them. It's implied you remember it because you're doing it or talking about it, non-verbal. A type of implicit memory is a procedural memory, skill memory, knowing how to do things. It is not inspected consciously in long-term memory. This can be like riding a bike or using correct grammar. Then we have working memory, which is a small amount of information that can be held in the mind and used in the execution of cognitive tasks, contracted with long-term memory, which is the storehouse over one's life. Part of this is the phonological loop, a memory component that briefly holds auditory information, leads to long-term memory, such as repeating a phone number out loud a number of times to remember. There's also the visuospatial sketchpad, a memory component that briefly holds information about objects, appearances, and location in space, leads to long-term memory, such as picturing where you parked the car. Expected memory is memory that involves remembering to perform a planned action or recall a planned intention at some point in the future. This can be something that, like remembering that you need to submit your college application before the due date. In terms of storage, there's also long-term potentiation, which is the process by which synaptic connections between neurons become stronger with frequent activation. Biological process in memory formation. The next part of memory is retrieval, which is getting stored information out of memory. There are retrieval cues, which are stimuli that help locate information in long-term memory. An example is listing the 50 states. Alphabetically, A is cue to remember Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, etc. Then we have constructive memory, which is just adding on the information stored in our memory based on what we remember and what we previously knew from elaborative rehearsal. Recognition is the ability to recognize an event or piece of information as being familiar and used for multiple choice tests. Recall is the retrieval of related details from memory used in fill-the-blank or an essay test. Context-dependent memory is that information is optimally remembered when it is recalled in the same place in which it was initially learned. You do best on a test if it is taken in the same time room that you learn the information in. Mood congruent memory is the tendency to recall experiences that are consistent with one's good or bad mood. If you're upset, you are more likely to remember negative memories with the same emotion. State-dependent memory means that people recall more information if their physical or mental state is the same during both encoding and recall, such as if a child with ADHD learns times tables while on medication, they are more likely to recall them while also on medication. LTM is increased when part of the learning period involves the retrieval of information, like through the use of tests. Metacognition is the ability to be in control and aware of our own thoughts. For example, you know an answer to a test question, so you decide to come back for it later with a fresh view. Levels of processing go from shallow processing, which start at the sensory level, sound, etc., and maintenance rehearsal, structural phonemic, to deep processing, meaningful analysis, somatic, leading to more lasting memories. There are several ways to improve memory. One way is chunking, which means the information is represented as a single meaningful item. This allows more into short-term memory, such as faster, more efficient reading. Then we have the spacing effect / periodic retrieval. This is massed versus distributed practices. 18 sample questions at one time versus 6 practices each day for 3 days. Distributed practices is rehearsing the information often. Whenever occasion rises, it helps ensure ability to recall when needed, and spaced out studying in small increments and more efficient than mass studying or cramming for hours the night before, which I do. A new way to improve memory is through mnemonics, which are techniques for organizing information into long-term memory. There's also methods of LOCI, which means imagining items to be remembered and associating each with a piece already stored in memory, such as the example used in class, which included a shopping list with items paired with items you see as you walk through your house. This is a memory palace. Another part of memory is forgetting. Wait, what's my line? Just kidding. The forgetting curve is when we forget a lot right away, but then the amount of forgetting levels off. Encoding failure is when there is no memory because the information was never stored, never processed in the long-term memory. So failure to then recall. This can be shown in the Nickerson and Adams 1979 penny study, which is the true penny. Interference theory is when other memories interfere or get in the way of the memory we're trying to recall / so failure of recall. There are 2 types, retroactive and proactive interference. Retroactive interference is when new information interferes with the recall of old information, such as you can't remember old passwords due to only remembering the new passwords. Proactive interference is when old information interferes with the recall of new information, like when you can't remember new locker combinations due to only remembering the old locker combinations. Tip of the tongue phenomenon is when you know it, but you can't access it. You need more retrieval keys. Damn it, I lost! Next, there's repression, which is psychodynamic Freudian perspective involving ego being in distress, causing unconscious burying of memories / information. Inaccurate memories are like eyewitness studies, such as in 1975, there was a film of car accidents where people were asked to estimate the speed of the car when it smashed, bumped, collided, and contacted the other car. The terms could have distorted their memory of accident, speed, and broken glass. Memory is not a video. It's constructive and constantly reconstructed. Constantly changing. Source amnesia is a faulty memory for how, when, or where information was learned or imagined, as when misattributing information to a wrong source. At basis for many false memories. Constructive memory, consolidation, analyzes how brain creates memories
may not recall real happenings, perceptions, beliefs, attitudes may also alter memories. It also fills in the gaps.
Misinformation is information learned after an event interferes with the original memory of what happened. Even subtle new information can alter a memory. Imagination inflation is imagining an event that never happened, which can increase confidence and belief that it did, creates false memories. Another part of forgetting is amnesia, which is extreme forgetting. It can be psychologically or physically based. There are two types, retrograde and intergrade. Amnesia. Retrograde amnesia is when a person can't remember personal aspects from their past. Anterograde amnesia is when you can't form new memories. The problem is in short-term memory, so can't transfer into long-term memory. There's also Alzheimer's, which is a progressive and irreversible brain disorder characterized by gradual deterioration of memory, reasoning, language, and finally physical functioning, associated with loss of neurotransmitter and acetylcholine. Another type of amnesia is infantile amnesia, which is the inability of adults to recollect early episodic memories associated with the rapid forgetting that occurs in childhood.
Now on to intelligence!